Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the FY18 closed, FY19 open annual meeting. We appreciate you in person, getting through security and coming up to the 21st floor. We appreciate it. We also appreciate all of our folks online, and the webcast and the slides. The webcast is being recorded, so we can post it on our website. Hopefully later today we'll have both the slides and the recorded webcast available for playback for anyone who may have missed the meeting. And there's certainly a large amount of useful information that's in the slides that will not be necessarily spoken to during the meeting, but it's a wealth of information that you'll certainly want to download and get your hands on and pass around the office. So we'll have that up later today. I just want to go quickly through the agenda. We're going to get things started with the Comptroller, Thomas Shack, in just a few moments. Jenny Hedderman, the Deputy Comptroller and General Counsel, will speak, as well as Howard Merkowitz, Deputy Comptroller, and Catharine Sheppard, Deputy Comptroller, to speak about their respective business areas. And then we'll be joined by Catharine Hornby, the Assistant Secretary for Budget at A&M, who will share a budget update with us after the morning break and after Kathy. And then myself, Scott Olsen, I'll be talking about the new Comptroller website, ways to reach us on social media, and a little bit about some of the see-through transparency updates that we've gone through in the last year. And we'll finish up today with Jess Cogswell, the Training and Help Desk Manager, to give you a little insight on training and best ways to utilize our help desk during this busy closed open session. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Tom Shack, the Comptroller.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the our next year of closed open for fiscal year 18 and opening closing fiscal year 19. We are very, very pleased to have you here today and online. We welcome the opportunity to partner with you. As I try to do regularly, it's to recognize the fact that we understand that our success is based upon your success as agency leaders and leaders amongst the 170 departments in the Commonwealth. Just a quick reminder, we oversee with about 125 to 130 staff members a number of different projects, obviously, but one of the things that I think people should be aware of is just the fact that we oversee the accounting and audit for about $60 billion a year annually with that staff. And also, of course, payroll operations for approximately 96,000 employees, full-time employees. And and so it's a big job, and we rely upon each and every one of you, again, in that partnership to accomplish the adequate and appropriate oversight in service to all of our constituents. But again, our job and my job is to make sure that you have the ability to be able to be successful in your individual mission, and that we as a Commonwealth are being accountable to all of our taxpayers and those that provide us with our support and those that we help. So with that, I'd like to also just tell you quickly that we were, Scott, should I forward this? Anyway, we just had our annual agency leadership summit. We just had our third year. I want to thank everyone who attended and the leadership around the Commonwealth. The session was fantastic. I also want to thank all of our speakers, particularly our state speakers who were state leadership speakers, which include the governor, the attorney general, the inspector general, treasurer, auditor. Yes, we had a couple of artificial intelligence experts come in, folks from Governing Magazine and an entrepreneur and PhD, who shared their perspective relative to how AI is going to impact the government over the course of the next, not only several years, but I think certainly over the course of the next decade. It's something that we all want to be poised to be focused on. So the other thing I want to just share with you is we had a fairly large milestone just recently with see-through, our transparency mechanism. And for those of you that have not used or utilized see-through, we are very, very proud of the 3 months, we've had over 500,000 page views, which is unheard of on a state transparency site as far as I'm aware. Certainly, something that's never happened here in Massachusetts. And that brings us to a total of more than 1.5 million pages over the course of the past 22 or 23 months. We went live in September 2016. So that is a credit to all of the work that you do on a daily basis, and that the folks do in all of the payroll and accounting and audit functions across the Commonwealth. But I am very, very pleased that in our 3 years of our administration, we've accomplished a great deal, and we're looking forward to accomplishing more. Now, the other thing that I just want to remind everybody about is the fact that we have to be cognizant all the time of the legacy nature of our system, right? So MARS, HRCMS, LCM, some of the other systems, and there are over 125 systems that interface with those that are accounting, audit, and payroll systems. So security is obviously a big concern. Security is a very, very important thing to us, not only as a Commonwealth, but also from the standpoint of making sure that everybody understands that while we're working on these systems, you have to be really cognizant of technological security and IT security. And so we're very, very pleased to have partnered with EOPS, the Secretary of Olsen, Technology Security, Services Security, and we're in the process of welcoming on a new secretary. That's going to be Kirk Wood, that announcement last week by the governor from EOPS, and we're very excited to partner with him. But I also want to say a special thank you to Secretary Mark Dunley, who has been a fantastic partner for us, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with EOPS as we move into the next era of state technology and state accountability. And it's through that partnership with them and with you that we're successful. So, make sure that we covering all of our points. One other thing, we also, last year, just after this, we received the results from the Center for Data Innovation, which is the National Clearinghouse for Data Innovation. And the state, as a whole, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, came in #1 for data innovation across the country. And I think that's a credit not only to our partnerships among state agencies and partners, but that was the entire state, right? So education, healthcare, all of the, and accessibility, data accessibility across all of these different private and public sectors, public interest, and so forth. And that's a really great sign. And because we are truly becoming a plugged-in, data-driven state, and we're going to continue to push that leadership across the country. And that's something that I think is a credit not only to us, but to our citizens and the folks that we represent and our constituents that we serve on a daily basis. So, the other thing that I just want to point out to you is that with regard to the IT security, it's very important that everybody remember that we are Jess keeps telling me to put the microphone closer to my mouth. It's almost like an ice cream cone at this point. So, well, can you turn up the volume? So I know we're trying to make sure that we can hear this online. So in any event, is that better, Jess? Thank you. But the fact is that we have to be, not only as it relates to data security and the security that we talked about, it's really important that people understand the nature and types of data breaches that are going on, because it's you who are out, again, working on these systems on a daily basis that put us in a position to be successful. And we want to work with you. If you ever come into a situation or think that there's something that's problematic, always feel free to call us. I know that historically, as a former CFO in an agency or department and COO, I was always hesitant to call the Comptroller's office, right? And I don't think I'm speaking out of school here when I say that there's a natural tendency to want to
say, we can deal with this, or it's, we don't want it to become public. We're not here to pillory anybody. We're here to support your missions and to help. And if we don't do that, then we're failing. So never, ever hesitate to call us. It's not like we're going to, we're going to help you solve these problems and solve these issues, as opposed to, simply broadcasting them. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that we're supporting the data and the integrity in the systems, but I do want to just remind everyone that partnership, really relies upon open communication. And if that's not happening, I want to hear about it, right? So if we're not serving your needs and if we're not appropriately handling your requests in a timely fashion, anybody can pick up the phone and call me, and they do. And I welcome those opportunities to plug in with you in any way that we can. So with that, I want to say thank you again for all of your hard work and support over every year that we close and open. We're expecting some really exciting things and some exciting announcements, so stay tuned over the course of the next few months relative to the accounting systems of the Commonwealth and collaboration and opportunities to collaborate and work together as we advance into another revolutionary era of technology. So with that, I'll introduce to you Deputy Comptroller and General Counsel Jenny Hedderman, and Jenny's going to share with us her perspective relative to a couple of legal and operational issues that have arisen. So welcome, Jenny Hedderman.
Good morning. Is that close enough? Or do I have to? All right. So good morning, everybody. I know when the lawyer stands up, everybody kind of has a heavy groan. Our goal really is to, as the Comptroller said, to support you. We know you're in the trenches, and part of what my job today is to kind of key you in to some of the trends that we're seeing and how to protect yourself. So again, the best thing you can have is information about where the risks are, where the potholes are, and how to avoid them. So there's a lot of my deck. They're not meant to go through today. So I'm going to go quickly through the slides. You will have them. They're really meant to start a conversation in your agency. Everything that's on the slide deck is not your personal responsibility. You will have part of the puzzle and part of the responsibility, but all of the jobs here are a collective responsibility under your agency. So the slides here are really to say, look guys, in your agency, this is what we need to do, and who's going to do it to make sure we're covered? Because there's a lot of news, it's a big news year, everybody's looking for the next big mistake, and we really don't want to see you in the press, unless it's for a really, really good reason. So we often get asked what our authority is to provide guidance in this area. So if you need a slide that says that, here it is. So this is really to give you some teeth to say, well, the Comptroller's office has authority to tell us to do this, and we really need to do it, so you need to pay attention. So it's not to say that we had to tell you what to do. It's really to help you have the authority to come and say, I have to do this, this is our responsibility. So this is to give you a little bit more clout. So what's happening in the government world, and you really need to know about it because this is the basis of everything that's happening in government today, is that the government accounting world has changed drastically. And so the standards are just getting higher and higher. There's no more plateau where you get to a certain level and you stay there for a couple years. The government world now is saying, now that we've hit this plateau, now we go to the next thing, and now we go to the next thing. And what follows? The auditors who are auditing the government standards. And there's many, many auditors out there. They have the business of auditing. So what are they going to do? They're going to spend a lot of resources to figure out how to audit those new standards. And where are we? We're somehow trying to catch up, just trying to get those audit standards done, and then dealing with auditors who are there with all these fresh audit standards to test us. So we know that's the environment that we're in now. So hopefully the guidance here will help you get a little more prepared so when those auditors come in and they start asking questions, you have the information that you need. Okay, so now it's not just focusing on getting the job done. I mean, so many of us, we get to the day, we're just happy to get to the day and get through the 5-foot pile and go on to the next. But we're not being judged focused on just getting their jobs done. Now they're asking questions like effectiveness, and what did it cost you to do that? And what are the operational costs? And is it duplicative? Is there waste? Was there fraud and abuse? So they're coming from all angles, trying to figure out what we did wrong. So we just have to be prepared that that's the environment we're in, and we need to kind of be paying attention to that. So who's on the hunt? Everybody. The press, the media, auditors, the public, everybody has an interest in what we're doing. So what does that mean for you? So compliance is critical. If you remember anything from the slide deck today, it's compliance is critical. It means you have to be thinking not just of what your specific job is, but how does your job support the compliance of your agency? So we know you have unrealistic, challenging demands, and you're balancing a lot of competing interests. So these are just a list of some of the issues that you have to deal with, and that's just half a list. You probably have 2 or 3 pages of things that you're juggling in your agency. So why does it not matter? Staff are under enormous pressure to get things done. And just a reminder, if a department head or a manager asks you to do something and they say, make it so, it doesn't mean find any way necessary to get it done. The presumption is you're going to follow the rules and do it appropriately. So just to, kind of give you that headset, just be careful when you're asked to do something, the expectation is always going to be that you're going to be doing it the right way. So we know that we can't be perfect. And we're seeing a trend that at the management level, people are being asked to do things which aren't necessarily as compliant as they should. We don't know why it's happening. It could be new people. It could be they don't know what the rules are. But we're seeing a trend. We're seeing transactions that are coming in that are not supported, that are not funded, that are not so compliant. So we're seeing this trend, so we want you to be alert to it in your agency. So we're also hearing an increasing concern that people are afraid to talk to management when they see something that's not really that great. They don't want to talk to their legal counsel. They don't want to talk to their managers. They're just afraid or intimidated by that. You need to ask the question. And if you feel really concerned about it, give us a call. Because if you float something with us and we say, yeah, that's really a concern, you really need to talk to somebody, then you have somebody to back you up saying, you're really getting into the danger zone here. And you don't want to be getting into the danger zone yourself. Don't put yourself in that position. So internal control risks, those are the red flags. So we've also seen an increase in payroll errors. You're seeing, issues in the press, and it's a big hunt right now. But you have to be careful with payroll because payroll rules are pretty standard. So when you see anomalies, the automatic presumption, whether it's right or wrong, is it's fraudulent. It's intentional. You're trying to gouge everybody. So you have to be cautious about that. Also, mistakes are really costly. So if you make a mistake because you're moving too fast or you did it the wrong way, it takes 2 or 3 times as long to pull it back. And if money has gone out, and you have to try to fix taxes, and you have to try to get the money back, it's really difficult. So you just have to be careful. And then the sunk cost, that's what the media and the auditors are looking for. Did these mistakes have unintended costs that we're never going to get back? Those are the hard and soft sunk costs that you really, really cannot recover. There's also a lot of focus on mistakes. And it's not just the media, it's the auditor's office, it's the inspector general's office. If you have federal grant, it's the federal grant inspector generals. They're all coming and they're hovering. Really look at the guidance that's out there. Look at the best practices that are published, and that should be incorporated into your internal controls, because the best practices really are to guide you and prevent you from hitting those potholes. So if there's a payroll issue or some sort of mistake, it's automatically assumed to be an internal control weakness. When the auditors come in and they don't see documentation or they see mistakes, they tag you for an internal control weakness. So the way to get around that is to start focusing on the compliance end of it and documenting what you're doing, following the checklist, following the best practices, so you're less likely to get into these kind of findings of internal control weaknesses. There's also kind of a misnomer that payroll is just payroll. They're just entering time. It's just one day. What's the big deal? It's not just payroll. If you're not entering time, employees are entering time they haven't worked, supervisors aren't looking at it, they're not really paying attention, it's considered time in every single agency. But when it's multiplied over 1,000 employees, that's turning into millions of dollars. And that can really add up. And in some agencies, when you're getting down to the end of the fiscal year, a couple $1,000 really makes a big difference. So it seems like a small deal, but it really isn't. It's kind of a big deal. There's also kind of a push to hide payroll. You know, you can hide it under an earnings code. You kind of mischaracterize it as something else. Don't. Because eventually it's going to get caught in an audit. It may not be today, but it may be next year or within 3 years for an audit, and they'll come back and they'll tear through every single transaction that you've done because the presumption is they're fraudulent activity. So it's going to make your life miserable. So just be careful with that. So material payroll changes. So if you're doing material adjustments, which are more than just one day, it's considered an internal control issue, and it should not be considered routine. So if you're constantly just kind of getting payroll done and then going after the fact and fixing it, that's a big area of risk, and it's going to catch up with you. So just be careful. And it's automatically considered by auditors as an internal control failure. So just watch. There's a whole bunch of lists here of things to watch out. Also, if there's a major mistake, such as you didn't pay somebody the right amount for 2 years, or you overpaid them by $100 a pay period for 2 years, you have to rectify those type of situations. It may result in litigation. You may have to do a settlement. You may have to bargain with the union. It's just a lot of excess work that you have to do. Whenever you get into those situations, give us a call, because we can probably assist you in that process. Don't get into a situation where you have all these lawyers involved and now you're in litigation and in court, and you're going to pay 2 or 3 times the amount that you'll have to in order to resolve it. So let us know about that. So why does it matter? Why are we focused on this? You know, the saying goes, I'd rather beg forgiveness than ask ahead of time. Well, in the old world, that worked. You could just kind of do it, and you'd get through. In the new world, there's too many eyes on what you're doing. Too many people that are waiting for the government to fail. So they're looking for mistakes. And they're looking at your internal control plan, and they're looking at the policies, and they're saying, okay, I want you to show me how you're doing this. And they're very, very specific. So they're on the hunt. It hurts your reputation, and when you have really important business to do, and every single person in this room and everybody online has critical services to do, when your reputation is harmed, it makes it harder to do your job, especially when you're really working hard. So you have to be careful, and it's the cumulative effect that comes up. And this just talks about, you know, how difficult it is in time. So the time for someone like me and your agency counsel and you and 5 other people and all the emails back and forth and then trying to figure it out, that's thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't really think about it, but that's thousands of dollars that you're not focused on the real work that you're doing. So a little bit of preparation is going to really save you an enormous amount of time on the back end. Especially with tight budgets, and we all have tight budgets, we don't want to be wasting money. Also, this is something, if you're being asked to do something that you are not comfortable with, you just pull up this slide, have it in my office, have it in my binder, you pull it up and you say, you're really asking me to do this because I'm kind of uncomfortable because that might be a state finance law violation. So if someone asks you to do something you're not comfortable, pull the slide up, and the comptroller's office said we should pull the slide up when we're feeling uncomfortable. That usually helps managers see that maybe they want to kind of document and follow the rules a little bit. This slide is to protect you in those situations when you're being asked to do something that might not be the right thing or you don't feel comfortable about it. So don't just put it through because someone signs off. Because ultimately, if it's under your UA, they're going to come back to you or they're going to say, why did you do it? And if you say, well, I did it because I was told to do it, it's still not going to look good. So protect yourself, and this is another slide you can use for that. Okay, so where does compliance begin? Department head. In order for your department head to get security, he or she has to sign a certification saying that they will comply with state finance law. They're going to have all their fiscal business in compliance. So that's where all these policies and everything comes from. The other part of that is you are kind of integrated into that process because your department head says, he's hired all of you to comply with state finance law. And if you're the CFO or the general counsel, you have a responsibility to to help your department head comply with state finance law. So tag you're it. This list gives you the type of questions that you will face in audit or investigation. So this is the place to start for internal control compliance. The types of questions that I need to be thinking about to protect myself and my agency. So when something goes wrong and people are on the hunt, they're going to say, why did it happen? Where's the documentation? What does your internal control plan say? Did you train on it? Did you use it? And why did this happen? So when you have an internal control plan, make sure you're training on it, that you're using it, and people know what it is. If you can say, yes, I had it, I trained on it, I was following it, but we made a mistake, or it was an inadvertent anomaly, that's going to be much, much better than seeing a pattern of just not following any type of policies or procedures or having no documentation. So know your internal control plan. So this gives a list of what all the different parts of the internal control plan. So when you have a chance, take a look through that. And this just gives you kind of the bullets of what is included in your agency. You're not going to be doing every single part of that, but this is going to be part of what your collective agency is doing. So the department signature authorization policy, if there's one policy I would recommend going through and reading through just to understand the hierarchy of authority, this is a good policy to take a look at. So everybody gets a UAID and it's connected with MARS sign-off. So the DHSA, that's where the authority is. If you have a chief of staff who never will go into MARS or HRCMS, they still have to get security with DHSA because the auditors go to MARS and they say, print out all the people with DHSA in your agency. So anybody who's signing off on documents needs to be on that list. So if they're not, this is something to go back to your security people and say, everybody who signed any document in the agency on behalf of the department head needs to be on this list, and we're going to be audited on this. So please, let's get up to speed on this. You can have any internal process for documenting your signature. If you don't have DHSA, that's up to you. It just gives you have to have electronic evidence. The other part of this is a misnomer that, if you decide it's legal, that it's okay. Every single act you do, every single action by your agency has both a fiscal and a legal component. And it's all under state finance law. So it's not severable. You have to have both. You have to have funding authority, you have to have funding, and you have to be legal in your agency. So it's all part of the package. You can't just have pieces. So what we're trying to say in all of this work is it's not siloed. It's not like football where you pass it to the next person and they go down the line. It's a huddle. It's all collective together. This talks about the UAID. This is you're mostly all familiar with this, so when people are reading through this, it just is a reminder. Within MARS is the official record, just like HRCMS. You have other documents that are screen prints. Those are not going to be the official record. So what's in MARS is the official record. When the auditors, when the press, when anybody goes in for an investigation, they go to MARS, and they get screen prints or reports. That's the official record. And then they're going to come to you where they're going to say, where's the supporting documentation? So your job is to make sure that what you put in or what your staff puts in is accurate and complete, and that you have supporting documentation to back it up. And if you have justifications for how you reached your decision, that's good to have it because it shows, even if you make a bad business decision, if you did it compliantly, it's much better off. So that's where they start for the audit. The other part is just because it gets through MARS doesn't mean it's compliant. So just because a transaction gets to done or to final doesn't mean it's okay. If it's incorrect information, doesn't mean it's compliant. So just be careful of that because it will go through all the system edits and go through and be completely wrong. And you're going to get audited because you used the wrong object code or you didn't use it the right process. So just because it gets through, it's just an accounting system. It's not a management system as far as managing your compliance. You manage the compliance, MARS records it. Okay. Another part just to remind folks is Comptroller does not approve transactions. We go through an administrative review to make sure you meet minimum requirements, but we don't approve your transaction. So if things come up, we double check to see if there's any big mistakes. But we don't determine that it's legal. We don't determine that it's compliant. That's up to you. So don't, feel as if, look, got it through comptrollers, we're safe. Ultimately, it comes back to you. Some people are not aware of that. Okay, the series of reliances, we've gone through this before. This is just good for you to review as far as how that works. It rolls down from the department head. And then any restrictions, anything related to security, like this person can only sign off on contracts that are less than $500,000, or this person does this sign off, all of that should be documented and put into your internal control, and the people who are doing it should have it on their desk or their desktop so they can look at it. So your internal control should be accessible to every person in your agency, and the specifics for their job should be accessible in a binder on their desk or on their desktop. So they can pull it out, they have easy access. So there's no excuse for them to say, I really didn't know what I was supposed to do. So have it accessible. So this talks about direct delegation. Comes down from the department head to the first layer. That first layer cannot delegate it down. There's no sub-delegation. The department head can only delegate to another individual. So if they delegate to the CFO or payroll director, that person, if they're on vacation or maternity leave, can't sub-delegate it to somebody else. It has to be a direct delegation. So just check on this at your agency. This is what it should look like. So when you're talking to people, talk to your security people and say, we need to make sure we're in compliance with our delegation. Let's check through. You get security reports, that's run, you have to certify it biannually. This is a good slide just to remind folks. And the changes in security. Okay. This is what you're certifying when any transaction, whether it's payroll going through LCM into Mars, or whether it's a contract or anything going through Mars, this is what you're certifying. So when the auditors come in, that little certification on the front page of Mars, this is what it's saying. So you have to make sure your internal controls are paying attention, documents are accurate and complete, expenditure is supported by sufficient funds, made in accordance with legislative authorization, all of this. This is what you're certifying. So when people come in and want to look at compliance, this is what they're looking at. And they're going to say, how did you meet these requirements? So this is a really easy checklist to go through when you're processing documents. This is just a slide for your security and for your management to make sure you have the structure set up to support. And also that you have sufficient controls and segregation of duties. You cannot have one person on both sides of a transaction, which means you can't have somebody encumbering and also making payments, because that's on both sides. Why? Because that creates the risk of fraud. Because if I can enter an obligation and then 2 minutes later make a payment, that's not having segregation of duties. Now I can still be, if you're small agency, small units, I can still be the same person who does it, but I have to have somebody else looking at it, signing off or validating that you've had at least 2 sets of eyes on it. So protect yourself. A lot of you are really good at what your job is. Somebody leaves, and you have now 2 jobs, and they're on both sides. Happens all the time. You can still do it, but you have to protect yourself. Don't be on both sides. You may be a jack of all trades, but make sure you have another Jack or another Joe on the side, kind of say, yes, this is okay, and we have 2 people looking at this. Protect yourself. Be really good at your job, but part of being good at your job is protecting yourself. So think about that. Okay, this just goes through what does it mean to submit. These are just reviews, what it means to going to final. Okay, so these are in the state finance law. These are just tips for state finance law compliance. If you don't have them in your internal control plan or you don't have them out in your staff, this is just really easy to put in and just helpful for you to remind. So there's 6 tips. If you try to stick with these 6 tips, you will be in a very good position for compliance. So figure out what your planned activity or expenditure is, whether it's personnel, payroll, or whatever. Figure out what your legal authority. Do I have legal authority to do this? If you don't know, ask your legal staff. Do I have legal authority to do it? So ask the question. Do I have funding to support it? Please do not enter into any obligation unless you have funding. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't say, well, they promised me a sub, but it hasn't come in yet. Don't incur those obligations, because then you're going to be breaching state finance law, and if the money doesn't come through, you're going to be in a difficult financial And don't just think, well, I'll just pop it over to prior deficiencies. It's still going to be considered an internal control weakness, and you may get findings from the auditors. And if it becomes a habit, it's going to get you in much worse, because if they come back and there's a mistake, they're going to say, you've been doing it wrong for 3 years. Well, everybody does it that way. Don't fall into the trap. It's just not good business. Expenditure classification handbook. Does everybody know what that is? So, expenditure classification handbook, you should have copies or a link on your desktop if you're doing anything fiscal, because you have to know where to find the object codes and what the compliance responsibilities are. Evaluate internal controls, ethics issues, conflicts. That's where the huddle comes in. That's where you make sure you're talking to everybody, asking the questions. If we do that, is it going to raise an ethical issue? That's certain kinds of contracts where you're doing multiple agencies. Are there conflicts or risks? So you have to identify those, because many people get into really good business relationships, and they haven't thought about these other issues that pop up that make a problem. Follow the rules for conducting purchases, procurements, and disbursements or payroll. There is a process to follow. Can you expedite it? Absolutely. Are there emergencies? Absolutely. Do you need help finding a way to expedite it? Give us a call. We will help you. We don't want to burden you with bureaucracy and take 5 hours to do something when it can be expedited. Sometimes people build so much process into what they're doing that they make it bureaucratic. Most of these procedures can be done in an expedited way, and we can help you do it. Some departments get into the habit of doing things over and over again the same way. You can reinvent that. So if you need something expedited, if you get into an emergency, give us a call, and we'll tell you exactly what you need to do in order to comply. Follow the regulations and the policies. Whether it's Comptroller's policies, Executive Department policies, if you're in the Executive Department, OSD policies for procurement, make sure you're following them. They're there. People are going to expect you to follow them. So make sure you have access to your staff. And then this is really important. Document your decision-making. If you document that you are attempting to comply and you are really following a good process, you're going to be in a much better place. This just gives you a list of things to think about when you're in the process of incurring an obligation. So before you do it, this is a checklist you can have, the questions to ask before you do it. So funding reminders. Expenditures are not a spreadsheet activity. Now, we have to always live within our means. We have to move money around sometimes. We have to move expenditures around. But be careful, because sometimes we forget that the legislature has appropriated money into accounts, and they expect it to be spent in a certain way. They don't expect the money to be bopped around in different ways and moving expenditures and moving people. They don't expect that. You have to sometimes, yes, but just be cautious and make sure you're doing it the right way. So expenditure corrections, that's coming down. You may hear more about it later. So expenditure corrections are an adjustment. They're not a funding mechanism. So you have to make sure that when you're making obligations, you're putting them into the account where they belong. It's not that I put it in this account and I'm going to pay it out of here, and then a couple weeks later when I get the money or I fix this, then I'm going to move the expenses into that account. Can you do it? Yes, it happens all the time. But it should not be a regular occurrence. It should not be a way of doing business where I'm going to pay everything out of one account because I can get it out by Friday, and then I'm going to go back and then I'm going to fix it later on. That's an environment for fraud, and you will be audited against that. So expenditure correction has a policy. Read through it. It tells you exactly what the appropriate use is and what the risks are. It's just a danger zone, so be careful. Can you do it? Absolutely. Do we support it? All the time. But be cautious. Protect yourself. Payroll expectations. This is the expectation that everybody out there is expecting, that you're accurately entering it as an employee, that supervisors are validating it, and that it's going through the right approval process. The payroll user group, anybody who goes to that, the materials are on our website. Please look at it. We do have a specific one on March 21st. There's a section on legal reminders for payroll that goes into more detail, so please take a look at that or talk to your attorneys about that. Vendor customer, the most important thing, all the details, we'll talk about it in other aspects later on. validate. It is your responsibility to validate that when you are paying a vendor or another payee that they are the legal person to pay. There's a lot of fraud out there. You will get a W-9, and unless you validate it, you may be sending the money someplace else. Now, the Commonwealth almost fell prey to that. We caught it before it happened, but $4 million would have gone overseas if it hadn't been validated. So protect yourself. Someone wants to make a change, they send you an email saying, can you please update the vendor customer file? Make sure you've talked to somebody or you've got some sort of validation that it's coming from an official authorized signatory for that vendor. Don't rely on just the emails, do the validation. Contracts, grants, ISAs, payments, we're getting down to the wire. Make sure you're validating payments. Don't just rubber stamp them and make the payments because you're in a hurry to get them out. Because when you're audited, they're going to say, where's your proof that you validated that we got what we were supposed to get and that they weren't overpaid? So make sure you have that process in place. So document your validation. Final invoices for those departments who are using the standard contract form. If people do not give you a timely invoice, and you have to go into the prior year deficiency, you can take 10% off. It's in there. You will save some money. Contact your vendors and say, look, if you don't get your invoice in and I don't pay you by August 30th, I'm taking 10% off, and I may not have money. I may have to wait for more money. Normally the vendors will get the invoices in quickly. So just keep that in your back pocket. It will save you a little bit of money. Once August 30th passes, it's really hard to make payments unless you have continuing accounts. Operational funds, they revert, and it goes into the prior year deficiency process, which means it pulls the money from your new funding, and sometimes that really will hurt you in the following year. So be careful about that. So if you have anything entered into the system that's going to be public, like a check or something on see-through, be careful about putting any PII in it. If you have a client name, do not use the client name in the doc ID because that violates privacy. So be careful of what you put into the accounting system as an identifier. It's really easy to use the SSN. It's really easy to use their legal name, but it's a violation of privacy. So any human services, you don't use client names because it's a HIPAA violation because it identifies that somebody's getting benefits. So just be cautious of that because privacy and identity theft, if that information gets out, people's lives could be ruined, and you don't want clients or even yourself, other employees, having to deal with that. Settlements and judgments, this is just to let you know there is a mailbox and a website with everything you need to know about settlements and judgments. So people in your agency who are doing settlements and judgments, you can ship them this link. And then there's a couple of slides on settlements and judgments. I won't go into it. It just gives you just an overview of what they are, so if you don't do it. This is just a scope of compliance. These are the buckets that some of you are dealing with all of this, some of you dealing with different sections of it. It just shows you that we have a compliance screen. Key resources, the right-hand side are the key resources that you'll be doing. So this should be a link. If you're doing fiscal, this should be a link. It has the policies, the form, the expenditure, annual compliance calendar. These are the key tools that you'll be dealing with. There's also a guidance for CFO link here. It has a lot of key information on one page, so this may be also helpful to find key information. Internal controls, whenever you have new staff hired and there's been a significant change, you get new management, you shift jobs around, make sure that you reevaluate security roles. People think that security roles are like a coat that you just take with you. They're not. Security roles are based on the job that you have. So when you move to a new job, you take on a new job, you go to a different department, you move someplace else in the secretariat, security needs to be reevaluated. And you should only have the limited amount of security you need to do your job. It shouldn't be too much. The more security you have, the more risk there is. So just be cautious. So internal controls, there's a huge push. Be more efficient, less costs, but just make sure that when you're being more efficient and you're reducing your cost, that you don't increase your risk. So when you're talking about reducing costs and being efficient, make sure you have internal controls to support it. So fiscal responsibility should be part of that discussion. So the ICQ, the annual internal control questionnaire, is out at the departments. I would encourage you to include your agency counsel as part of that. And if your agency counsel gives you any grief, tell them to call me. I'm happy to talk to them, that they really need to be part of that and support you. Also make sure that you're not doing click, 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 and you're just saying, yes, 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 we're in compliance. Because what's the document that everybody's going to ask for where you have an investigation or an audit? They're going to say, what did you fill out in the ICQ? And if it says, yes, I have all this contract stuff for performing contracts, and they're going to say, okay, where's the documentation to support this? And if you, like, whoops, you know, I don't really have the documentation, we just kind of click through, it's just a questionnaire, it's like a survey. They're going to tag you for lack of compliance. The auditors are going to tag you for not having internal controls. It's just not going to be pretty. So the ICQ is a great opportunity to reevaluate exactly what you're doing in your internal control and throughout your department, and to remind people these are the areas that are being focused on. So tell your management, tell your attorneys, these are the areas that we're asked about, we need to be accurate. So you are certifying, your department head is certifying that it's complete. And when people come in to look at you, they're going to be looking at this document. Public records request. So there was guidance sent out about 6 or 8 months ago on public information requests. This is just a reminder. You should also send this to legal, anybody who's dealing with fiscal records. The link is here. Any request that you get for finance data or employee data, you need to let us know, because there's some data that you should not be giving out. Now, many of you may be getting requests from the Globe for race data, for gender data. There's certain demographic pieces of data that we refuse to give out because they are a key attribute for identity theft. So you have to be cautious. And that includes any repository where you pull information from the CIW and put it into local databases or local applications or third-party applications. So just because employee data may be in one of your your internal databases doesn't mean you can give it out. So be careful about that. So circulate this around. If people want fiscal or employee data, there's a mail address there, send it there. We got this request, and we will give you advice. If it's already on see-through, you send them to see-through. If it's information you can give, we can say, yes, this is in your purview. You decide whether to give it. And then we'll say, this is information that we say you cannot give out, and we'll give you the information of why we're not giving it out. We won't respond to the request, so don't send the Globe here saying, go to the Comptroller's office, they'll answer your questions, because we cannot respond on your behalf. But we will certainly help you with that process. So this is the NIST standard that is identified in the guidance. This lists the type of PII that you should never give out. So please look through this, look at your internal databases, look at your third-party databases, and if this type of information is embedded in that, make sure it's not given out. And the last one is the demographic information. When you connect somebody's race with their name or their zip code or their address, a hacker can figure out who you are and steal your identity. They only need 2 pieces of data, a main identifier and one of these demographic keys. So that's why we're really concerned about this, because it doesn't take much to steal your identity. And if anybody's had their bank account wiped out, it's a horrible thing to go through, and you really don't get that money back, and it costs you thousands and thousands of dollars to clean up your credit. So be careful of that. That's why we raised this issue. So when in doubt, contact us. Our goal really is to try to get you to yes, if we can. And sometimes it's really messy, and we get it, but call us when you think you're running into trouble or you need some advice. More often than not, we can provide an alternate or some sort of advice to get you where you need to go, unless it's really illegal. But 99% of the time, we can give you advice on how to get there. Thank you so much. Deputy Comptroller Howard Merkowitz.
Thank you, Jenny. So now that Jenny has scared you a little bit, I'm going to do something a little more prosaic. But I mean, what Jenny was talking about remaining in compliance with state finance law leads into one of the areas I'm going to discuss, which is the end-of-year financial audit, where compliance is an important factor in that. To the extent that there's any non-compliance, that becomes an audit issue and may cast doubt on the accuracy of the financial statements, leading to management letters or findings from the auditors. So my areas as Deputy Comptroller are financial reporting, general accounting, and federal grants, as well as within general accounting, some non-tax revenue issues. So what the areas I'll be addressing here will be financial reporting, the end-of-year audit timeline, capital spending, capital assets, budgets, federal grants and cost allocation, receivables, revenue receivables, intercept, debt collection, and e-revenue, which formerly was known as e-pay. So many of you may know that the Commonwealth and the Comptroller's Office issues two types of financial reports. The first one is the statutory or budgetary basis financial report, which is due October 31st. And as its title indicates, that is a financial report based on the state's statutes or the state's budget rules. That is not a GAAP-compliant report. It's how the Commonwealth budgets. It's generally how most people in the agencies it's the report that most people in the agencies care about, since it determines whether the state is in statutory balance, whether it has a balanced budget according to state finance law. And that one's due October 31st, as I say. The second report is the financial report, or the CAFR, which is due December 31st. That is a fully GAAP-compliant report, so it includes all assets, all liabilities, which the CFR does not include. It's an important report for the rating agencies and for outside government, good government groups. They look at what the long-term status or the long-term fiscal health of the Commonwealth is. So that report is submitted annually to the Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, for consideration for a Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting, also an important factor in how the rating agencies look at us. We've received that award 27 consecutive years through 2016, and we've submitted it for 2017 as well. We expect to get that again, and a lot of that is testament to how you folks assist us in preparing the final financial reports for the fiscal year. In completing the financial reports, we send out what we call GAAP packages, which is converting what's really a cash-based financial report, the CFR, to the CAFR focus. And the major focus for that is reporting revenues or liabilities that accrued at the end of the fiscal year. KPMG, which is the Commonwealth's independent auditor, will be fanning out to those departments that they'll be auditing. I think they've already done that in some cases, and we will be joining them for those meetings. Those are mostly departments that have, or agencies that have significant or complex accruals or have audit findings in prior years. And as Jenny was mentioning, by signing these accrual statements, the department is certifying that the submissions have been accurately prepared and reviewed by those who have that authority. I don't think there's anyone from higher ed here, but higher ed follows a slightly different process. They all issue their own CAFRs, and we'll be issuing separate guidance for their annual reporting. We have used, in the past, we've used PartnerNet, which is really a repository for information that we get from departments. We will not be using that for FY18 for higher ed. For other departments, we will be. But we'll be using spreadsheets that they will be directly sending to us as part of their financial reports. Again, just for higher ed, the unfunded pension liability of the Commonwealth is allocated to each higher ed institution, and we issued those on March 19th of this year, so there shouldn't be any delay in incorporating those into their financial statements. Another accounting standard, GASB 75, which is accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits, which is really just mostly health insurance benefits. Those schedules will also be sent out to higher ed probably within the next month or two. And there's some additional adjustments that higher ed would be making for fringe payments that occur after the date of the allocation schedule. Those will be distributed in September after the FY18 fringe assessments are finalized to the last fringe run, the F&I. For other state agencies, not higher ed, GAAP reporting, we will be using PartnerNet. Those reports generally will be due for most departments on August 6th. For those departments that have more complicated GAAP accruals, we have begun sending out what we call special correspondence letters, directing departments to record their accruals in certain ways, and those are due at various dates. But we are, constantly in touch with those departments, helping them complete those statements. Higher ed reporting, due October 15th. That's actually their financial statements. Higher ed produces its own audited financial statements, which are due to us and get incorporated into our CAFR, and those should be received by October 15th. And here's some information on how you can submit your GAAP reports. Mike Rodino, Director of Financial Reporting, and Pauline Liu, Deputy Director of Financial Reporting, are available for you if you have any questions. And one of the focus of our non-GAAP financial statements, the CIFR, are what we call statutory receivables. Those are receivables due from another government body related to expenses occurred on or before June 30th and actually received by August 31st. We'll be issuing guidance on those in a few weeks. That actually will be reported in PartnerNet. We're trying to phase PartnerNet out over the next year or so to implement a more modern system, but I think this may be the last year we'll be using PartnerNet. Preliminary submission of statutory receivables is due on August 3rd, and a final submission due September 4th after the August 31st due date for those receivables to be collected by the Commonwealth. GAAP receivables are more comprehensive. They're receivables that are related to expenses incurred on or before June 30th, collected after August 31st, and are able to be measured. So those need to be reported in the GAAP package according to the GAAP package due dates. Audit timeline. As I said, the entrance conferences are starting now, and they will go through May and June. The field work by KPMG will be through May through October. These are the various dates for different types of accruals that we record. This will, as Scott mentioned, this will be posted online, and you can take a look at the due dates. And the due dates are on the information that we'll be distributing as well. Exit conferences and responses to management letter comments will occur November through December. We're trying to, as the Comptroller's office, trying to get a little more involved in that to make sure that KPMG is coordinating well with the departments, and departments know exactly what they need to provide to KPMG, which has been, some departments have had issues with that in the past. Capital assets. These are reported on the CAFR, not in the CIFR, but we're in a multi-year process to improve capital asset reporting, which has been an issue with the auditors in the past few years. So to improve that process, we send out reports, which we did in January, showing capital spending to help departments make sure that that capital spending is resulting in an asset when the asset is put into service. We'll update those reports after June 30th to reconcile capital spending for the full fiscal year. There's another report on mid-year and annual capital asset inventories that the auditors look at, and those should be signed off by the CFO to certify their accuracy. So to the extent that we don't report capital spending accurately, that becomes a management, management letter comment or an audit finding that the auditors have hit us with in the past, so we're trying to prevent that this year and in future years. One of the key components of capital assets is what we call construction and process review, and that is for capital spending that has already occurred, but the asset has not been put into service yet. So we have a review process separately for that one as well, and we've had some issues in the past with reporting SIP, construction process, so we're looking to improve that reporting as well. So any questions on that, just contact the financial reporting team. That would be Mike Rodino and Pauline Liu, and they will help walk you through that process if you have any issues. On the budget side, we need to make sure by the end of the year that any negative unexpended balances are resolved. In particular, if there are negative unexpended balances that result from the PF&I, the payroll, fringe, and indirect charges, so those will run regardless of whether there's money in particular sub or object, and those should be reconciled before the end of the year. Otherwise, we need to reconcile those before we issue any financial reports. Final date for any FY18 expenditure refunds is July 2nd, 2018. Anything after that will require documentation that the money was actually received by June 30th. Final date for any expenditure corrections is August 31st, 2018. Department should make sure the X's are final. Any drafts or rejects are cleared. As Jenny said, this should only be for mistakes where something was spent in the wrong subsidiary or object. And with the EX correction, we always require an explanation of how that will be prevented in the future. The EXs are something that the auditors look at to make sure that spending is in the authorized appropriation. Cost allocation, fringe benefits, payroll tax, and indirect charges. As I mentioned before, these need to be budgeted for. To the extent that they're not in the correct subsidiary or object, there will be a negative in that object that needs to be corrected. We're in the process of negotiating the FY19 fringe rates with the federal government. We anticipate negotiation and approval of the final rates by June 30th, as is usually the case. The FY18 approved rate it was 34.86% for general employees, and the payroll tax rate was 1.41%. The proposed rate, which we sent to the federal government at the end of January, was 35.41%, and the payroll tax rate 1.73%. But in the process of negotiating that rate with the feds, it appears that at least the fringe rate will probably be lower than 35.41%, so I know that's important for departments that have non-budgeted spending, particularly payroll spending, where the fringe rate is charged. I'm not sure exactly how much that will be reduced by, but probably by at least 0.7%. As I said, we're in the process of negotiating that. So instead of 35.41, I think the highest it'll be will probably be 34.71%. So when you're doing your budgeting, you can take that into account. Indirect cost rate plans. In the past year, we've actually transitioned to a different methodology and a different system for indirect plans. We've contracted with the firm Maximus, which has been doing our statewide cost allocation plan for a number of years, but now they're doing all the departments' indirect cost plans as well under the supervision of staff at the Comptroller's office. So the staff who are in charge of that here are at Comptrollers are Catharine Kwan, email address over there, and Ashley Jean-Francois. Any issues with indirect rates or indirect cost negotiations, you should call them or contact them. The Maximus is actually negotiating the rates directly with a cognizant federal department, but we are overseeing that process and are the ultimate approvers of the rates themselves. We'll be sending requests for information to the department soon, as we're starting on the FY19 indirect rates. Unfortunately, the federal government is often very slow in approving these rates, so sometimes there's a prior year rate that we charge until the current rate is approved, and if the rate goes up, we won't charge you retroactively. If the rate goes down, you get a refund. So that's a win-win for you guys. So any questions on the actual assessments should be directed to Craig Cady, who implements the rates for each department. Federal grants, cash expenses should be reconciled to collective revenue on both the BQ89 and the BQ88 tables. To the extent that budgets are not reconciled, that would be generally due to draw rejects. Here are some of the reasons for the rejected draws. You can work with Catharine Kwan and her folks to correct those, but those need to be done before the end of the year as well. Now, there have been cases, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but there's a federal program, the Treasury Offset Program, which intercepts any debt the Commonwealth has from payments the U.S. Treasury makes to the Commonwealth. So it doesn't matter who owes the debt, they will take it from the next draw that we make. And a lot of times that comes from federal grant draws. So even though the particular federal grant that gets intercepted is not the one that owes the money, they get hit with the intercept. This is not a good system. I think we have realized that. And we work with departments and with the federal TOPS program to identify the debtor. And our policy states that the debtor shall pay the debt ultimately and make whole the department that actually got intercepted if they were not the debtor. So we've been working with, we haven't had too many of those in the last year, but there have been a few in the last couple of months that we've been working with departments and with the TOPS program to identify the debtor and make a transfer from the debtor's account to the federal grant account that got intercepted. As you know, we have, as you may know, the Treasury, the state Treasury has transitioned to People's United Bank for its bank accounts. Santander is no longer operational, so anyone who's potentially using Santander now their draws would be rejected. So to the extent that you have not done that you have not transitioned to Santander, you can work with Catharine Kwan and her folks to make that transition as soon as possible. Use the mailbox for federal grants. I think the mass mail accounts will still work, right? I mean, the state.ma.us will still work, but these are, I think we're a little inconsistent in some of these. But these are the new mass.gov email addresses, which I think were implemented earlier this week or last week, right? For those who use bars, and have RE transactions in the system, those should be cleaned up by, before the end of June. Here are some of the deadline dates there. I'm not going to go through all of these. These will be online. You can look at those. For those of you who have used debt collectors, there's what we call an NT1 transaction that nets out the actual payments, but include payments to the debtors after their fees, but includes those fees within March, so we can track those. On RE's fiscal year roll will occur on July 7th, and summary bill modifications on 6/30. From 6/30/18, the last day for those modifications will be 7/6, July 6th, 2018. Question?
Yes.
All right.
Jennifer would like you to repeat the information about indirect cost rate adjustment.
Okay. So as I was saying before, the federal government is often delayed in issuing its final approval for indirect cost rates. So let's say for FY19, that approval might not come halfway through FY19 or towards the end of FY19. So to the extent that the rate goes down, from the prior rate, which we would have been charging until the rate is approved. We will give departments a refund for whatever months in FY19 the rate would have been effective for. If there's an increase in the rate, we will not make a retroactive charge. We'll just apply that rate prospectively.
Yeah, it's the FY18 rate. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So anyone who has a lockbox for collection of revenues or bills, that went paperless this fiscal year, thanks to the departments that have completed the transition. Out of a total of 74 total lockboxes, 23 departments have gone paperless. So that's obviously a lot more efficient for you guys, and to the extent that you haven't done it, I urge you to do that through Tim O'Neill, who handles this, and Pat Davis, who's in charge of lockbox operations for us. Here's a little factoid. It doesn't really affect you directly, but here's the amount that's intercepted. Since 1995, we've intercepted a total of $176 million for debts that were owed to Commonwealth. Much of that is through the refund process in DOR, where we intercept any debt that can be applied to a personal income tax refund. And just over the last few years, we've actually started intercepting lottery debt. Total dollar lottery debt that's intercepted is over $1.5 million. So anybody who plays the lottery, make sure you pay your state debts. Here's some more detail on the lottery offsets. So we're getting 3 a day in lottery offsets for debts that lottery winners owe the Commonwealth. Total number that we've intercepted is about $2,200. 2,200 people. Again, on non-tax revenue, debt collection services, any department collecting outstanding receivables is required to use the contract before they attempt to write off any debt. The contract initially expired in February, but it's been extended to another year to 2/1/19. Same terms and conditions. We have 6 vendors on contract. They're listed here. As I mentioned before, the NT1 document allows us to track both the net and the gross amount of the intercept, which we need for our financial reporting. And here's a little more detail on the debt collection activities of the Commonwealth in FY17. Debt collectors collected a total of $6 million. Much of that was with higher ed. The $6 million is the top table. The higher ed is the bottom. So $4.7 million out of the $6 million is for higher ed, generally student loans that haven't been repaid. So in line with what Jenny was talking about, we oversee, the Comptroller's office oversees PCI compliance and card processing. So we use a company called Vantiv for Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, card processing with American Express. And we have 3 different entities that work on web pages for us: Fiserv, Grant Street Group, and Ncourt. Security and compliance audits, including PCI compliance. We use 6 vendors. Those are all on a statewide contract. And there'll be some updated PCI compliance filing requirements from Vantiv that will be forthcoming that we will distribute to folks. Pat Davis at the Comptroller's office is the person who is in charge of this. Need any information, just give her a call. She'll be happy to help you. And here's some other information on billing and revenue. Pat Davis, Tony Yee, Stephanie Rucker, Corinne Steller at the Comptroller's office, and they will be happy to help you. So that's it for me. As I said, this will be posted online, and any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and feel free to call us with anything else you need to know.
Thank you, Howard. We're going to take a a quick break. We'll try to keep it to about 10 minutes, and we'll see you back. Okay, everyone, we're going to get restarted. Everyone on the web? And of course, for those of us joining on the webcast, at any time if you have questions, you can type them into the chat box. And Deb is here running the chat and can relay the questions to the presenter. And speaking of presenters, our next one is Deputy Comptroller Kathy Sheppard.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all? Oh, good. I have to say, I'm good too. I had my checkup, my annual checkup this morning. So it was kind of weird for me because I always hear what everybody says before me, and so I have no idea what you were told. So hopefully I won't contradict folks. And for next year, don't have the meeting on Thursday, so I can make the whole thing. So, all is well. So, first we're going to go with just our office is doing a little bit of a reorg, and some of it will be finalized at Memorial Day, but it's so close, I thought I'd just start to bring out the basic knowledge for you. So reporting to me in the future will be 3 teams. The team you know and love is our state payroll team with Kevin McHugh and Trinja Bugdiner, who are running payroll right now, so I'm sure they're very busy. I haven't seen them. We have a new state payees and payments team that's going to be run by our chief, Thomas Smith-Vaughn. So congratulations, Thomas. We are actually splitting the Accounts Payable Bureau, and this bureau will have vendor customer registration. It will have payment processing in all its forms, P-cards, EFT sign-ups, everything. And it will have tax reporting. So very robust agenda, and I know that Thomas is up to the challenge. And I think I saw him somewhere. So, oh, there he is. Congratulations. And then our third team, with leader to be announced soon, is going to be the contracts and revenue team. And this is a rearrangement for us because the non-tax revenue group will join us. So Tim O'Neill and if you know some of the others, Pat Davis, Tony Yee, Stephanie Ruckers, and Corinne Steller, they will be part of our group going forward with contracts, with ISAs. So I have a lot to learn, and I'm sure you guys will have questions as you always do. And don't worry, Dawn is still here. I don't want to, but we'll talk about that in the future. So that's just announcements. Keep your questions coming. We're about to hit the end of the year, and that's always a busy time for all of us. I'm going to move into payroll first, just to give you a few updates about HRCMS in the system. As I said last year, we tried to keep up to date with all the releases, and we are about to launch another release for HRCMS and the tool. The tools part of the upgrade is behind the scenes. It's all the software that runs the system, and that is positioning us to take our system to the cloud, which will happen in a couple months. So we're pretty excited about that. We're looking forward to some improvements in that area. But we're also doing an image upgrade, which we do probably every 6 months, 5 months, 6 months. And this one will offer, again, more technology in the fluid area. I don't know if you're starting to use your phones more for self-service, time and attendance. You can, you should. It's there for you, but it will get more robust as we go forward. We always want to stay up with technology, and we're always trying to reduce our customizations. So another area of payroll, I'm going to talk about reimbursements. Employee reimbursements, and I did touch on this last year, asking if folks were interested in this, and we've done a lot more development over the past year. We've run a pilot. We might run another pilot. We'd like to know if anybody's interested jumping in on this, but we have even more functionality than last year, where we have a form online for employees to complete for reimbursement requests, and they workflow to the approver. Departments can have secondary approval if they want it, so we can have more than one approver that can be defined at the time. But we think it's going to be a look at the future, and we're really happy about this change coming when you're ready, or soon. The form details, just to give you a little more, and I'll give you a couple screen prints as well, but the form detail, it has several lines that you could enter on one sheet, but you could do multiple forms in a pay period if if the need is there. You could complete the mileage, you could do travel by car, by odometer, or by the miles, and it does calculate the rate based on the collective bargaining agreement or the IRS rate, if there's another rate involved. And then you can attach receipts and other documentation for the travel right online, so when the approver goes online, they can look at it. So that is, I think people will find that well. I'm going to show you, just like I said, a couple screen prints of it. So I think, it's better here than it is on my screen. But you can see that you have places for several expenses. It does, we have mileage, obviously, but you could put amounts for other types of travel with an explanation. At the bottom, you can see add attachments, and you can add as many attachments as you need. And then up at the top right, we have the submit button, so the traveler, the employee hit submit, it would go to their approver, and it can be designated for other approvers after that. On our landing page, at the bottom, you'll see we'll have a reimbursement select for people to use when they need it. And then over on the right, we have alerts. We try to use alerts to get you used to them for just notices that go out, but this would be an alert that says you have something in your workflow that you need to take care of if you're an approver. Oh, sure. The question is does this include out-of-state travel? It includes whatever reimbursements. We started calling this travel last year because that's what the pilot was. But if you have some other V10, reimbursement, you can put the amount in that screen and put the description and the attached receipts. You can use it for whatever you need to. So we'll have the different earnings codes there for selection. So then this is the last screen we have. And this just shows that once it's approved on the employee's form, it will have the different rows for the different codes with the dollars that are being paid, and then the description of what is being paid for them to know it's going to be on their paycheck for whatever period this is. So any other questions? Okay. Oh, okay. The travel needs to be paid by two different accounts. Unfortunately, because it's payday, I don't have my team there, but I believe the answer is combo codes or LCM. You'd be able to allocate the cost to whatever you need to.
That's possible with their place for funding source, sometimes it's grant related. That's hard to give them numbers sometimes.
And I will take that back to have further information as we go through the pilot. So these are good. I appreciate the input. Okay, so other things going on in payroll, these are two different items. The first one is the secondary approval for overtime. We happen to turn it off in this pay period that's running now. So as always, and I think Jenny probably stressed this in hers, the person that's approving the time is responsible for the work that, that the person did do their work, that they did show up for work, that they did work hours over the allotted work week, so that if overtime is approved, there's no secondary reason to approve it because the person worked it and they deserve to get paid. So there's no stop there, there's no secondary approval, but I know that Kevin will cover this at the PUG, the Payroll Users Group, and that there are reports or warehouse queries that people can look just to take if they need to take a second look. So that is really a benefit to a lot of departments. The secondary approval process was just busy work on Monday when you had payroll folks that were already way too busy. So that's over. So far working well. The second item is reimbursements. And again, I don't know if Jenny touched on this at all, but I'm sure you all have seen in the newspaper there's been a lot of headlines having to do with the state police and the recording of their time and their reimbursements. And we need to clarify, so if you heard it once, hear it again, that for tax reporting purposes, reimbursements don't always mean it's not tax reportable. If you have receipts, then it's not tax reportable because it's for your employer's purpose and they've reimbursed you for out-of-pocket expenses. Nobody makes any money in the game. It's just, they got what they needed because you went to the store or you traveled or you did whatever you needed for the business and they returned the funds. But if there's not receipts available in most cases, and I know it's not all cases, but I'd rather have you just see that there. If there's no receipts involved, it's tax reportable. And that doesn't mean it's taxable. That's up to the employee and their tax advisor, but it's reportable by the employer. So we need to get receipts. And while I'm on that, just because a lot of people are trying to do in-house electronic communications, with emails, and it's totally understandable. Instead of having everything signed off, you get an email, and then they say, oh yeah, or the accounts payable group or the payroll group says, would you approve this, and has an attachment to it, and then the person writes back, yeah, I approve what's attached. They don't send back what's attached. There's no evidence that they really approved it. So they either have to write in the email what they approved, or they have to send the attachment back. And that's why we think that this reimbursement for payroll will be so good, because all the attachments will be right in the system. Everybody will have access to them, and there won't be questions anymore. Okay? So next, I'm going to move into some of my fun statistics. I didn't bring as many this year, but I assume, again, I wasn't here, that Howard covered intercepts. That's a significant savings for the Commonwealth, very important, and a tool for all of you to use. And that's part of the revenue group that's coming over my way, so I have to learn more about it. But prompt payment discounts is something that's been going on in payments for 12 years now. Last year I had a slide that said you're starting to plateau. I was kind of nervous because I know that there's money out there to be had if we manage our contracts well. This year, we're already through April at $9.3 million, so I believe we're going to exceed 10, and we might exceed 11 million. So I think we're on a trajectory to improve a bit more. So congratulations, everybody. As you well know, this money goes back to your line items, so it's a savings for you, so it's worth the emphasis. And just so you know, these are the missed opportunities. We're still at 2.3 through April, so it's not like you've done so much better in taking them. There are more out there to be had, and still more, so we'll probably be in that same 2.8 neighborhood by the end of the year. But this is where the savings really came from. These are the contracts that have discount terms attached to them. And this year, there was a significant improvement. So I don't know what to correlate that to, but congratulations. Good work. Keep it up for fiscal 19. This is great for everybody. Okay. So Dynacash. We just wanted to spend a minute on this because Dynacash is not an excessively used checking account, but it's an emergency account for your payroll. Sometimes it's an emergency account for other things, which is fine. But we transitioned through the Treasurer's Office to a new bank last summer, and I think everything's going well. I mean, we've seen improvements as far as security and reporting. We think that the user interface is fine, and we do have some other developments we can roll out as we go forward when people are comfortable. But the lessons learned that we've wanted to at least highlight now that we're back to the end of the year again is the fact that while we didn't see like 50%, we saw more than expected of people that did not regularly reconcile the accounts as we closed out the old ones. They let items linger through a year, through 2 years, and then through a lot of years. So this is the time that we should be taking stock, looking at the account, shutting down the advance, and moving unpaid checks to the unpaid check fund. You could do that more regularly if you want, but you should do it at least annually. So I want to get that on everyone's radar. Okay, now some fiscal year reminders. All right, I was going to have a slide, but I didn't get it done. And this is my third year up here. There's no encumbering after June 30th. Chapter 29, Section 13 says there's no encumbering after June 30th for budgetary accounts. And we're trying to get you to that place. So we'll keep trying, but I want you to know that you should be doing all your year-end encumbering now. You should have it done by the 30th. You need the goods and services delivered by the 30th. But we'll say, like cash, if it slips into the first day after the 30th, which in this case is Monday, July 2nd, we'll look at those encumbrances. After that, don't ask us. We don't want late encumbrances unless there's a SUP, and the SUP usually moves things to the next year, so that's not often. And then in other types of funding accounts, capital, trust, federal, they all continue into the following fiscal year, so there's no reason why you can't encumber in the new year and reference back old dates if that's what has to happen. But we don't want to see encumbering go after June 30th. Same for payroll. Okay, put your payroll holds in, obviously not for split year, but put your payroll holds in. The next two bullets are about one of our other contracts. I didn't have a slide this year. We continue to have savings. They're not excessive, but we do have the cost recovery group, Griffin, auditing our payments that are, or auditing the accounts receivable of vendors. That's how they do it. They look at the vendors, they look at their accounts receivable and find things where there's credits from the Commonwealth on the books. If you've overpaid a vendor, then you should ask for the money back. If it's something that you routinely use the vendor, and you want to say, okay, we'll offset it with the next one, but put a CEC or a GAEC as appropriate into the system so that Griffin knows that you're collecting it and they won't try to collect it as well. And if it's now and they still owe you money, they have to pay it back in the same fiscal year. You should be collecting whatever else that you overpaid. And hopefully not too much, because really this isn't a contract that gains us a lot of money. It just helps us understand what department might need training or other assistance as they go through their work. And then the final item, another perennial, but we're doing very well, is paying all our vendors through EFT. So anytime you have a vendor you're going to pay more than 4 times a year, they need to be on EFT. We are rejecting contracts. All contracts have to have EFT. I think we're probably at 95%, so it's really very good, but we just want to remind you so that it doesn't slip. Okay, a few other reminders to help our friends at Treasury. Don't pull checks. It's not very often a reason. You should be paying them EFT anyway, but it's very costly when you pull it and then have to match it and mail it out yourself. That's a lot of hands involved, so don't pull checks. Retained revenue accounts, intergovernmental service accounts have had the edits lifted all year. Retained revenue accounts will have their edits returned within the next week, so just be warned. It's not usually an issue, but we'd like to make sure you're aware of it. Intergovernmental service accounts will have their edits returned in July. Negative balances, please check all your accounts, make sure that you've cleaned up any activity that has caused an irregular balance in any account or any sub. And then another item that we've been doing now for several years is cleaning up the vendor files, so we inactivate vendors that haven't done business with us for 5 years. That way we make sure we have the latest information on them. A lot of them have closed. We don't hear from you. It's supposed to be it's not supposed to make an impact, so I don't think it does, but it will be happening in the next month. Any questions? Guys, it's such a good audience. Okay, favorite dates, key dates. Already has the encumbrance deadline for the budgeted accounts, 25,000 or more, RBA workflow and go through platform. We have 3 trainings that we're offering in the next 2 weeks for Close Open for Beginners. We always have new folks. This is really in-depth training. We encourage you to send your folks to it and, make sure you understand the finer points as we get into this busy season. ICQ responses are due at the end of May. I think they've gone out. But if they haven't, okay, they have gone out. But our out-year contract roll, we expect to have the budget loaded on May 30th. We will, as we always do, discontinue processing encumberances on the 30th. Well, you processing them so we can bring them to final on May 31st to June 1st so that we can do the out-year roll on the 2nd and 3rd, and then we'll have everything ready for Monday the 4th. Kevin just walked in. Payroll user group is the 6th. And, as I said, the last day to receive goods and services, June 30th. July 2nd, I don't know why I don't have here the last day for encumbering, but we also have the last day for revenue deposits. Another split here was 50-50. We're going to get too used to that. It is going to change eventually, but it makes it easy for everybody. July 20th, the balance forwards will start, which everybody loves. And then August 21st will be the last accounts payable payroll. And then we'll go through the contract lapsing at the end of August. From our contracts team and our payments team, I'm leaving you with 2 pages of links to our job aids. So you can have them online. They don't do us much good here, but they are available to you. These things happen once a year, so you want a reminder. We have them here for you to submit payments as well. Any questions? Times are good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathy. Up next, we have an update from Catharine Hornby, the Assistant Secretary for Budget at A&S, and we're always happy to have Catharine here. Every year we ask her to speak, and she always says yes. And one thing about Kathy is she's so efficient that last year she had 2 slides, this year down to 1.
Thank you. Welcome all. I've been here the last few years, generally with terrible news about budget, about taxes. This year is a little different in that taxes are coming in higher than we anticipated, but I would say that there's still considerable uncertainty, and also the joke going around my office is that, yes, taxes are higher, but they're not for you. So I think what we're trying to navigate this year is that taxes through April, were over projections by $809 million, which is 3.7%, almost 4%. So, considerably above benchmark through April. A big piece of that non-withheld income is $581 million of the, through April numbers. And the 2 things that I think kind of structurally we're really grappling with are, first, that the federal law changes, the federal tax changes that were passed right around Christmas last year and implemented, in the last days of December and into January, created significant incentives to prepay taxes or to pay taxes early for both state and local taxes, especially in states that have high state and local taxes generally, mainly because of new limits on how much state and local taxes are deductible. So taxes that were paid in 17 are essentially federally deductible without limit, but taxes starting in 18 are limits on how much money can be deducted from federal taxes. So there are clear incentives for high-income earners in Massachusetts and people with high tax bills in Massachusetts to prepay those taxes in the last few days of December. So we saw that, we think, or anyway, we saw a lot of taxes come in December and January, essentially the first few days of January, and it's remained unclear to us whether, when if that is prepaid, kind of when it goes away. We've expected all spring that the refunds would be high, estimated payments in April would be low, payments with returns in April would be low, and what's kind of surprising is that we haven't really seen that. We've seen refunds I've gotten processed a little bit faster this year for various reasons, but estimated payments hasn't dropped in the way that we expected, and it's unclear to us whether that means it's going to happen in June or September, meaning in the next fiscal year, or whether there's just sort of something else going on here. But I think that's kind of big uncertainty area number one in terms of taxes is should we expect that the money that we got in December is in fact going to kind of slip away in June, right at the end of the year. The other major uncertainty is that to the extent that these are capital gains taxes over a threshold all go to the stabilization fund per statute. And since the original estimates had us right at threshold, so kind of every new dollar of capital gains taxes goes to the state fund, which, clearly from a fiscal perspective, from a long-term stability perspective, is exactly where you want to be. The windfall goes to state fund, and when that money goes away, which eventually, it comes and it goes, that we're not reliant on it for operating costs. It does mean, however, though, if you look at that 809, you think non-withheld income, typically half of that is capital gains. If that's true this year, then maybe 250, 300 million, something in that territory, presumptively would go to state fund. Some of it disappears a little bit in June, and all of a sudden you're not really talking 800 anymore. Additionally, we've carried a deficit through most of the year. The way we saw taxes coming together, we weren't necessarily hugely concerned, but we do expect that we need, some amount of money to just kind of close a deficit that we've carried since the beginning of the year. So that's sort of the picture we're working with is we need 200, 300 million, something in that general territory to close the budget. There's something like 250, 300 million maybe that presumptively goes to state fund, and all of a sudden that $800 million becomes a much smaller number. Hopefully not a negative number, which is still a good thing from relative to prior years, but a much smaller number. So that's the context that we're dealing with. I think moving over a little bit to how we need to close the year, we collectively need to close the year. We have been all year assuming $200 million in reversions. This is, on par with where it's been recent years. I think last year, to set aside some one-time stuff, last year the reversions ended up a little bit higher than that, not a whole lot higher than that. So we're hoping to get reversions in the same general territory as we have the last few years, and we will be sending out an exercise initially to secretariats and then through them to departments late this week or the beginning of next week to start to map out, okay, of those reversions, how much do we already have in hand or how much can we predict? So that's it. Generally, and I think this sort of syncs up well with what Kathy was saying, we want to, from a transparency, from a kind of increasing certainty perspective and also from the perspective of just closing the year cleanly, we want you to pay invoices on time, get prompt payment discounts, manage spending appropriately at the end of the year in tune with our guidance around encumbrance deadlines, book revenue as soon as it's available, and just sort of do things cleanly and quickly so that as we come toward the end of the year, we can get increasing visibility into where we actually stand. I want to mention particularly one thing which you may be aware of in connection with taxes, which is many of the labor contracts, the labor contracts that are signed, and our understanding with respect to managers is that if taxes end at the level of the original benchmarks, so from a year and a half ago, that would trigger additional labor costs in both 18 and in 19. Essentially, there would be 1% retro increases back to July for managers or back to the beginning of the contract period for contracts that are in effect, new contracts that are in effect. We don't expect that agencies have budgeted for this, because we've never set the expectation that agencies have budgeted for this. So if we do hit these numbers, which essentially means if we end $400 million or more above benchmark, we expect that we would manage the additional labor costs associated with that through SUPs, and then through the kind of standard process of reserve transfers covering funds that cannot be paid for through already appropriated accounts. So So I wanted to say that just to kind of take the edge off if people are getting concerns that they have additional labor costs that they have never budgeted for. But that's basically it. Encumbrance deadline, as Kathy mentioned, is already in effect. Encumbrances over $25,000 require our review, and we appreciate your working with us on that. Are there questions? All right. Thank you all.
No, that's okay. I can introduce myself. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the Director of Department Assistance at the Comptroller's Office, and I wanted to just kind of wander around the room a little bit so you don't always people down here straightening their necks to look over at the podium. I do want to talk to you about a couple of quick topics. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. We recently, late last year, revamped our website, kind of resetting our web presence. So I wanted to talk to you about that, where you can find the critical details. We also have several social media platforms that we use to communicate with you and other audiences. And I also want to talk through a couple of slides on what Tom mentioned this morning about see-through is a couple of new data sets that have been added since the last update. So I'm not going to do a live web demonstration for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's live and it's on the web, so you never know what's going to happen. And second of all, for people following along on the webcast, they'll be able to see. So just by a show of hands, who has seen the new Comptroller's website? Okay, almost everybody. The rest of you, where's your pen? So this is our new website. We are at macomptroller.org. We do still link back to mass.gov. There's always going to be a link in the top left-hand corner back to mass.gov. And what we really wanted to do with this was make it an intuitive, interesting, and visually appealing presentation for people. And we tried to think about, and also not just try to think about, but we used data analytics, Google Analytics, to figure out what people are accessing the most and how we can get it to you in a quicker way. So everything really should start with the menu bar at the top of the screen. Most of these have, when you hover over it, most of them have a quick drop-down to get the things that you need, like the statewide key contact list. I think it was Howard or Jenny had the key resources slide up there. That's a quick way to get to that. So most of these have a quick drop-down list, including the business functions, to get to any of those business-related areas. And that also includes now fiscal year updates, the FY updates. We do send them out via email. We do add them to the e-update, but they also live here under business functions. The other great thing that we like a lot about having this type of format is this area right now where we're featuring the see-through with quick buttons to payroll and spending. That's an area that we can swap out very quickly in just a matter of minutes. So if there's an urgent issue or pressing issue, we can swap out the home screen, or we can just quickly and easily switch it out to something that's time related. I do want to mention, because a lot of people, and I know it's kind of tucked up into the top right-hand corner and might not be as prominent as it should be, but we do have a nice search box up in the top right-hand corner, and the search does a nice job of searching through not only the individual pages of the site, but also the document library where all the Word files and the PDF files are stored. So if you're having trouble finding anything based upon the new layout, my suggestion is to always start with the search. And it has, as most search engines now have, is a type match feature. So as you start typing, it'll display possible matches in the list down below, and you can just do a quick click to anything that you want. So it's pretty powerful. We're constantly making changes and adding specific pieces of text because we can see what people are searching for. So we look at that data frequently, and if people are searching for a specific topic, that tells us that it's not prominent enough. So we'll go in and add keywords or move it up higher in the hierarchy. scroll down on the home page, the first thing you see is some of our featured items. Of course, there's many, many ways, just like any website, there's many ways to get to the different spots, but this is where we have our quick links to transparency, public records requests, financial reporting, key resources, which includes all of the directories, the statewide key contact directories, and the Comptroller staff directory are all under that key resources, risk management tools, and the Comptroller's bio. As you scroll even further down, you'll reach our services menu, and this is an area that's heavily searched. Usually the top search is payroll, paycheck, and this is where you have your paycheck information. State employees and retirees can all go to the paycheck information page to access self-service time and attendance or pay info for retirees, so that's a quick link there. Some of our online services like VendorWeb, self-service time and attendance, and pay info are duplicated here as well, so there's multiple ways to get what you need. I won't go through all of them, but we do have policies and forms, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But here is our link down below to the CTR intranet. So the intranet didn't move. The intranet is still where it was before. That little asterisk there next to CTR intranet, it got cut off in the screenshot, but that just indicates that you need to be inside Magnet. And for those who are not directly connected to the Massachusetts network, you need to VPN in as if you were going into Mars to get to the CTR intranet. Now we'll come back to the intranet in a second. And as you scroll even further down the page, you have our news and announcements, press releases, mentions in the news, employment opportunities, where we have, depending on the needs of the office, we'll have permanent job opportunities, contract opportunities, or even internship opportunities. So that's a great place to check that out. We also have a live Twitter feed right there on the page, and we always talk about Twitter in a second, but we always push out a lot of content through Twitter, especially some of those job postings. We'll put in the hashtags, Boston jobs, mass hires, mass careers, to get people who are searching on Twitter to get them into our space. And finally, at the very bottom of the homepage, we do have the contact form. You can shoot us a quick message directly from here. You can call the main number. You can get the Comptroller info email address, which goes directly to the help desk, and we triage it from there. And there's also the help desk phone number here. Well, just a word of caution, I think there's actually a note about it on here. We don't want you, get back to Jenny's presentation, to get in a situation where PII or sensitive information is shared in an email or a document that goes around electronically. So we do have a note here to please not include sensitive or personal information like a social security number in any emails or web form submissions to our office. You would be surprised at the number of people who actually do that, but we're trying to cut that off and make sure that people don't send socials and other personal information over email. Just give us a call and we can take the information over the phone. Or we can call you. I just want to get into the business function page for a moment. I believe this slide was shown earlier in the presentation, but all your business functions are here. But one thing I want to point out about the business functions, when you go into one of them directly, it'll take you to the content that you're looking for, but there's always going to be, on each business function page, in the top right-hand corner, there's a quick link to policies and forms. So you don't have to go back to the home page. You don't have to do a search. If you're on any business function page, you'll always have those policy and form buttons in the top right-hand corner. Getting back to our intranet for a second. When you go to our intranet, and Jess is going to talk about this a little bit on her presentation, but we do have, again, depending on what time of the year it is, or we have a specific area for an announcement for closed and open related materials. Our job aid link is always here, and our e-updates, which we no longer post to the public website, we have them on the intranet. Those now live over here, and you can always link to it from the right-hand side. One thing we're really excited about, and we're always trying to find new ways and new technologies and kind of stay up with the times is our website is fully mobile. There is actually a separate view in the editor that we use for the website that allows you to design specifically to be viewed on a phone or a tablet. So it does it by default, but if we want to change it for a certain way for a phone, we can do that. So anytime you want, you can go onto your phone, go to macomptroller.org, and it's, like Kathy was saying earlier, people are using their phones for self-service time and attendance, it's fluid, you can get this at any time. This button up in the top right-hand corner looks like 3 little lines. That'll bring up the navigation bar in mobile form, so you can still navigate through the full site on your phone or your tablet or any kind of mobile device. And even see-through, one of the reasons we're really excited about this is you can go to our see-through homepage and click on any one of the icons to get directly to the see-through transparency page of your choice. So if you were to click on statewide spending or statewide payroll, it would take you out to the see-through webpage showing in a fully mobile form as well. So you've got Comptroller on the go, takeout, right? I just want to mention, again, we're always going to, anytime there's something that you need to know, there's always going to be an email, an e-update, or if it's a policy or a fiscal year memo, you're going to get it. But other things that come up throughout the year, job postings, as I mentioned, when we're at events, I sent out a couple this morning when we got started. We cycle a lot of material through Twitter as well. So I encourage you, if you are a Twitterer or a Twitter user, to check out our site and give us a like or a follow, whatever they call it. We also have a LinkedIn company page. I know a lot of you are on LinkedIn. A lot of people are using that now for, instead of collecting business cards, we just connect with each other on LinkedIn and we can always find each other. We have a company page, and what's interesting about that is you can go into our company page and click to see all the people that work in the Comptroller's office if you want to stalk us on the internet. I mean, connect with us through LinkedIn. And finally, speaking of stalking, we have a Facebook page as well. This is, again, another extension of Twitter and LinkedIn where we post, whether it's job posting or events or promotional materials, we'll always post on here as well. So we're all over the place. If you're ever looking for us, you know where to find us, and now you know even more ways to find us, and then in turn, sometimes for us to find you. I do want to spend a minute. I'm not going to go through a full-blown demonstration, but since the last close open meeting, we have added several data sets to the see-through family. So we went live back in 2016 with statewide spending and statewide payroll, and those still exist and are constantly evolving and growing. We've added, from a see-through perspective, we added the quasi-government agencies financial summary, so it's payments and all the financial information from not all, but many of the quasi-government agencies. We also added the quasi-government payroll, and we added as a temporary measure until these folks are added into the regular statewide payroll, which will occur at the end of this month, right? So this will go away, but when that story broke in the news, we responded very quickly, working with our partner to get this information online. I think the story broke on a Monday or Tuesday, and we had it posted on Friday of the same week. So we can move very quickly in state government with a lot of the tools and a lot of the vendors that we're using. And see-through, who's been to see-through? Again, a lot of hands. I could stand here all day and talk about how great see-through is, but I encourage you to look at it for yourself. Jess and I were at MassBuys, the OSD conference or trade show at Gillette Stadium last week, and we had a couple of little giveaways, nothing big, but we had a laptop, and we had see-through up, and the number of people, state employees and even people from municipalities, would stop by and see it and say, hey, what's this? and they would look at it and play with it on the laptop, and they were just totally blown away by it. So I do encourage you to take a few minutes out of your day and explore some of the data on see-through. Scrolling further down, we also added the state and teachers' retirement benefits, executive department new hires is a see-through site. And this one, the city and town website directory, it's not a see-through site that we made with our vendor, but that's a page that we put together that lists alphabetically all the cities and towns in the Commonwealth with a link to their website. And a lot of cities and towns, and that's what we're hoping to do over the summer, is grab one of our interns and have them go through and research and find out which ones. But a lot of them do have transparency websites or open checkbooks, as they call them, or some kind of a tool to share their information at a local level. Some of them are actually even using the same vendor, Socrata, that we use for our see-through sites. So it's pretty interesting to see from the city and town perspective what's going on out there. One note I want to make about the quasis, the financial data updates and the payroll data updates. They all are on different systems and on a different schedule. So again, there is a chart when you get to the page to see the update frequency for the quasi-government agencies. So they're all different, and you can see for the financial summary, the fiscal year, and the fiscal period that they're updated at. And same thing for the payroll. Now our data, the statewide data in payroll and spending is updated daily, and payroll is updated every 2 weeks on the Monday after payroll runs, after you get paid. So we're, from the state level, we're next day for both payments and for payroll. But the quasis are on a different schedule. So again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I do encourage you to check out see-through and also understand the benefits. We wanted to make it a tool not just for the public and not just for the media, both are who are using it very frequently. As Tom mentioned, we're up to 1.5 million page views since we went live, and it just keeps getting, as we add more data and more functionality and enhancements, which there are some coming, those numbers keep going up and up. But it's also a great tool for departments, and a lot of those people that stopped by our table at MassBuys last week, they said, maybe instead of running a warehouse query, I could just go into the statewide spending, sort it by my department, my vendor, and do a quick download from there. So it takes a minute as opposed to however long it might take to run a warehouse query. So I highly recommend to check it out, not because we want to blow our own horn about how great it is, but it provides a solution for you, it provides benefit for you, and that's one thing we wanted to make sure that this provided kind of, as Tom said, geometric ROI, not just for our office, but for the entire Commonwealth. So use it as a tool, and of course, there's many, many, many different ways that you can get in touch with us, and we also want to hear from you, not only on the website, but on see-through. If you're having a hard time finding something, or if you have a suggestion, or if there's particular pieces of data you're looking for, you can always give us a call or an email or social media contact. Just get in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you. We've actually got comments on the design of the website from the general public through the Contact Us form, and sometimes comments are comments, and every once in a while, though, there was one really good one that came in that said, my computer screen is so small, and your header is taking up so much of the screen. We really like the website, and it looks great, but the header's too big. And I went to a computer with a smaller monitor and said, hey, you know what? It is kind of big. So we tightened it up and made it shorter. So just anytime you have a question or suggestion, just let us know. Before our next presenter, does anyone have any questions about anything we talked about? Yes, Howard.
I wanted to add something.
So Scott's talking about how we're expanding see-through. One of the things we're working on is to put budget to actual information on see-through. Right now, the state spending piece of it is really vendor payments with, by account and by object. So what we're working on right now is putting budget to actual information by account and by object, not down to the vendor payment level, but to the object level. So we get a lot of questions. I know I get a lot of questions about how much is spent by account, how much is left in the account. We're trying to put all those chart of account elements online. That should be available probably within the next month or so. So that would make it a lot easier for you to do queries. We'll have some pre-written queries up there, some crosstabs year to year, by account, as I said, down to the object code level. So, I know that will make my job a lot easier, and I think probably questions come to departments about that as well.
Thank you, Howard. Any questions on the webcast? No? Great. All right, so I have a great close open. We have one more speaker, and she'll talk about the help desk and how to get in touch with us. So it's my pleasure to introduce my co-pilot and the other half of my brain, Jess Cogswell.
Thank you. A little scary, but true. Welcome. I know I have this time slot, which means I stand between you and lunch. I always seem to have this time slot, so I will try to go through my slides, quickly and efficiently. So a few years ago, we introduced the compliance calendar. We've always had kind of a matrix of dates when it comes to close open, but we do have this interactive and dynamic calendar that changes all the time. It is on our intranet site. You can see it there, highlighted an annual compliance calendar. We have two different versions. We have this pretty slick online version that you can go, you can sort all different ways. You can click right live, right in the links will take you to the job aid of the policy. This is a great resource. You can bookmark this, you can refer to it, and we find it really does a nice job of helping you plan out this busy time of year. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into putting this together. We want to make sure that we get it right. So we've worked I've worked with Donna for a long time on this calendar. It's always great when we see it posted. We also have it, you guys and myself included, my brain is kind of organized in Excel. I don't know about yours. But we also have it available for download in an Excel format. So if you would prefer to do it that way, you can. I would just caution you to take a look at that last updated column there because we do change things. Dates will move around, we'll add job aids, we'll add policies, so things do change throughout the year, so you want to make sure you have kind of the latest and greatest information. We also have, as Kathy talked about, the close open job aids. They are linked actually in the calendar. The links are kind of small, but you can see them there. If you're starting from our intranet page, you can see right in our job aids, I'm sure I'll take a page out of Scott's book. How many people have used a job aid? Show of hands. Wow, almost the whole room. Awesome. If you haven't, and sometimes I still go out and people say, a job aid, what's that? And that makes me a little worried. So the job aids are there to help you. So you can click there, and you can see right at the top, this is contrast. Right at the top of the sections where they are closed open, you'll see it. You'll see those job aids. So they're available in contracts, internal business, and also payments, because that's where we see a lot of the activity, especially transactional activity, when it comes to close open. So a lot of care goes through into those job aids as well, so please take a look at them and make your staff, share with your staff, share the calendar with your staff, and help us get the word out with it. To piggyback on that, we have an amazing help desk team out there. Here they are real people. Those are their real pictures. Some of them may be sitting next to you in the audience. You'll have to look around and find them. But they do a really, really amazing job. They tackle a whole host of questions. Seriously, pretty much any question that comes to a comptroller's office, from something transactional in Mars to members of the general public calling and saying, your lawnmower hit my car and I need help. They're really a dedicated team of, I would say, customer service professionals. They're always willing to go the extra mile to make sure that people get the answer they need. And they do a lot of different work. So in fiscal year 2017, just to give you an idea, we answered 10,723 help desk tickets. It's a lot of help desk tickets. For a short portion of that time, we had 2 analysts because we had a retirement and someone leave. It was crazy. We are now fully staffed, thankfully. To date, as of yesterday, we had 8,523 tickets. So we are just about on target to meet what we did last year. So they do an amazing amount of work. This chart where you see here, it shows the different kinds of questions that they get in categories. So you can see we have everything from, we have the 1099 helpline. We answer questions on our 1099s. We answer questions from accounts payable. And occasionally we'll have a capital asset question, once in a great while, Howard. But in payroll questions, and we talk to vendors and all kinds of stuff. So they really have an amazing breadth of knowledge to answer all these questions because when they're picking up the phone, you know, they have no idea, right, what's going to be on the other end. So they do a great job. So I just wanted to say thank you to them and let you guys know what they do and how you can reach us. So in addition to all the ways that Scott talked about, we have multiple ways that you can reach the help desk. We have our phone number you can call. We are open from 8:30 to 5 every day, sometimes a little bit earlier. You can call and someone will be there to answer the phone. In the event you get the voicemail, leave a voicemail. We check that all the time and we will get back to you. We also have the Comptroller.info email box. You can send us an email. As Scott said, please do not send us any PII, no social security numbers, any of that stuff. It's very disturbing, the amount of people, usually not state employees who send that. Members of the general public will surprisingly give you their social security number without even asking for it. But you can shoot us an email. We also have this form that's online as well. If you're kind of on the web and you want to use the form, you can. It's once again on our intranet site, submit a help desk ticket. You fill it out. The more detail you can give us, the better. You know, doc ID, are you getting an error message, explaining what you're trying to do. And then that can really give the analyst the ability to hit the ground running, right? They can look at the doc ID. They can, you know, research your issue and get back to you. So please reach out to us during close open. This is our busiest time of the year. However, we're ready for it, and we're always here to help when you do have questions. So with that, if there are any questions, I will take them. One other plug before I go, I think Kathy mentioned this, we do offer close open training for beginners. So please send your staff to that, or you're welcome to come as well. Where Elizabeth Faraday will be delivering that training along with Donna Rue to cover, you know, some of the pain points and to make sure you guys get through it okay. So thank you for attending today. We have one question, sorry. Oh yeah, and we do webcast one of the closes on the May 22nd. We will be webcasting one of those. So thank you, and the slides and recording will be on our website a little bit later. So thanks.